Hi, welcome back. Let us continue with chapter 9 with informal organizational communication. Besides the formal communication, whether it is top down, bottom up, or horizontal communication, that is the formal communication channel that we have. There are also informal communication forms that are happening within the organization. Informal method of transmitting information depicted as the wandering of messages through the organization. Grapevine is the various paths through which informal communication is passed through an organization. What is grapevine? Sometimes we call it as gossiping, or we can also refer to this as pacik-pacik makcik masih membawang lah. Nowadays the term is like membawang, and these are there are various paths of how the membawang can happen or occur in the organization. The grapevine characteristics springs up and is used irregularly within the organization and usually not controlled by the top executives, exists largely to serve the self-interest of the people within it. So let us look at some of the example. The first one, we have a single strand. A single strand is the type of grapevine in which person A tells person B tells person C, D, and so on. This type of grapevine is least accurate at passing on the information. Why? Because by the time when the information reaches to the person K, he or she might have a totally different content of the message. For example, MGT420 cancel and replace next day, and then when it comes to C, they already changed next Monday, and when it comes to K, instead of MGT420, maybe they change it to MGT420. So yes, this is what we call as a single strand. And then we have grapevine number 2, the gossip grapevine. So this is the makcik bawang. We all have this in our organization. If you need to tell someone, and usually it is something that is interesting. That is number 1, and number 2, it is non-job related. So you can tell to this person, and within seconds, everybody in the organizations will know about it. This person alone can tell to B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Oh, this person is very important for us to identify who is this person in the organization. Because sometimes if you want to use it to your advantage, you can use them. And then the probability individual are indifferent about whom they offer information to. They tell people at random, and those people in turn tell others at random. So if you look at this, not everybody's were informed about this. A only tells to B, F and D. D only selects K and G, meaning that probability pattern, we just inform those who are relevant, those who are affected, or those who might have an interest in the issue. For example, here, information about property auction. And cluster, the last informal is cluster. A person conveys the information to a few selected individuals that he or she trusts, and then they are most likely to pass information that is interesting to them and job related. So for example, job vacancy, internet application, we just inform these respective individuals, and these respective individuals would select another respective individuals to be informed, who might be relevant or interested with the information. And usually cluster is more job related. Sources of barriers communication. There are so many different sources of communication barriers. For example, these 6 are some of the things being discussed in your textbook, and we are going to go into each of them. Number 1, cross-cultural diversity. Individuals from different cultures may encode and decode their messages differently. For example, if we look at Japanese and Arab cultures in a formal meeting. For Arab people, if they come 30 minutes late to an interview, that is considered as okay. But for Japanese people, if you late for 30 minutes, that is considered as a not okay situation. So different behaviors in different culture, they may have different ways at looking at styles and looking at things. So that may influence in terms of the effectiveness of communication. And then trust and credibility, a very important barrier to effective communication is the lack of trust between sender and the receiver. The lack of trust can cause the receiver to look for hidden messages in the sender's meaning, and this can also cause the sender to try to manipulate the messages. That also can create another barrier. Information overload, sometimes at this time around, for example, like all of you are having 4 different classes today, and sometimes when you receive too much instruction, too many information at one time in a day, sometimes this might occur, information overload. Too much excess information that you can absorb. So this can affect in terms of your understanding, in terms of the messages that have been relayed by your last lecturers in your evening class later on today, and your reception and your understanding is a little bit different if you were to compare between your morning lecture, your attentiveness level as compared to your attentiveness level during your 4 to 6 p.m. class this evening, for example. And then language characteristics, sometimes, yes, we have a different meaning, different words, different phrases, they might have different meaning and terminologies. And this also might create another understanding or misinterpretation. Sepak and sepak, selak and sepak. Sepah, sepak, sepak. Yes, sepak, sepak. The ejaan is the same. Just one example that I could think of at the moment, but it has different meaning. And then gender differences between male and female also is different in terms of the way that we understand certain matters. And then other factors, time pressures may cause us to focus on information that help us to make a choice quickly. So based on all the barriers that we have already discussed, how can we ensure that our communication is going to be effective? Number one, there are things that you can do. Number one, you need to seek to clarify your idea before communicating, so that it will become much clearer, not only to the sender, but also to us as the person who's going to draft the message. And then number two, examine the true purpose of each communication, what you really want to accomplish with your message. And then consult with others when appropriate. Such consultation often lends additional insights and objectivity to your message. Get second opinion, whether or not he or she understands the conveyed messages that you are trying to deliver. And be mindful while you communicate in terms of the tone of your voice, your expression, your apparent receptiveness and to the response and the reaction to others, the eye contact, and then the body movement of your audience also you need to look at. And then follow up your communication, get feedback, get them to confirm whether or not they understand the message, and your actions support your communication. Your most persuasive kind of communication is not what you say, but what you do. When your action or attitudes contradict your words other than to discount what you have said. And finally, we discuss on the verbal and non-verbal communication. Verbal is the sharing of information through words, written or spoken. Non-verbal is the sharing of information using words such as your gestures, vocal tones, and facial expression. Importance of non-verbal communication can also use to add content to verbal communication. For instance, voice tone to show either agreement or disagreement. sometimes even when we respond to our kids, spouse or members, we use different tone just to express our whether or not we are agreeing with them ataupun tidak. So the voice tone is very important to know whether you are mad, you are not mad. So can be observed through your voice tone. So these are some of the nonverbal communication, which is very important. You need to learn about this nonverbal communication, because the most effective means of communication not only lies on the message. The message only represent 10 to 15% saja. But most importantly is on your body movement. That nonverbal communication is the most important in terms of the tone, the way that you are going to speak, your language, the terms that you are using, the facial expression, the physical characteristics, and then in terms of the environment, uh, when speaking in a room, one-on-one, closed door, might seems like it is a very serious and important matter. And then the proxemics, that is the sitting arrangement, the distance for the sometimes when you get too close, sometimes people will not feel very comfortable. So you need to choose in terms of the distance as well. And finally, technological communication. Nowadays, it is a norm. It's a new norm to have this like email, telework, telecommunicating, video conferencing, internet. These are all the new norms nowadays that we need to learn. And that is the end of our chapter.